You're listening to the Fantasy Wildcard Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Wildcard Dynasty show. I'll be your host tonight, Ali. You can follow me on X at FFDynastyGrill. With me as always, it's the best two of the wildcard. It is me and Mags. Mags, you can follow him on X at Hot Seat Mags. How are you doing tonight, my friends?
Yeah, mate, doing really, really well. Great to be back on again. And we got two, tremendous guests on the show. So can't wait to get into this action. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Probably less nervous than what you are with the massive game coming up next weekend.
Not nervous.
And I guess you've been here before. But yeah, no, looking forward to it. It's been a bit of a weird week with what is the first time in so many 17, a lot longer than actually weeks that we haven't had any action to talk about, but plenty to discuss and a really interesting topic for tonight's show. With that, Kevy's not on the show tonight. He's still trying to process what went wrong for the Eagles this season and get dumped out by the Buccaneers in the playoffs. So he's not going to be on the show, but he will be back next week. So yes, on with tonight's show. We welcome on two of the brightest minds in the UK fantasy community, the masterminds behind the brilliant Fantasy Sanctuary brand, the best two of the Fantasy Sanctuary, just all-round good guys. So we give a warm wildcard return to Rich and Tom, who you can follow on X at the FF Sanctuary. Guys, how you doing?
Yeah, thank you very much for having us on. Hard to live up the billing of the best two of the Sanctuary, but I'll try my best.
Yeah, it's always great to be chatting with you guys. It's been too long. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, cannot wait to get into tonight's subject, which will be a rerun mock draft of the 2023 rookie class. So this could be really interesting because it's been a pretty stacked class, to be honest, when you line it up against the previous few rookie drafts. So without further ado, we'll dive straight into the 101, where we're going to come to Tom. So Tom, who's your pick at the 101? This is very much the super flex format.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with CJ Stroud, and I could have gone a number of directions with this one. I don't really feel like there's too many bad choices in hindsight. This was a really good class. There was a lot of good players across the board in the first round and even later. I'm a little bit wary about the hype surrounding CJ Stroud going into 2024 because his ADP in best ball drafts right now is 52. And Nico Collins and Tank Dell are both going within the first 36 picks. And I think there is going to be a situation where it's quite hard for CJ Stroud to compete with the top tier quarterbacks because he only offers you like 9.8 rushing yards per game. But what we saw from Stroud last year was incredible. He was fourth in passing yards per game at 274, 8.9 average depth of target. It was the highest among quarterbacks who played 10 or more games. And he had 7 top 12 weeks. It's so easy to project forward and go, yes, he might not be able to keep up with the true dual threat quarterbacks and the true elite ones, but also to say CJ Stroud can absolutely take another step forward in his second year in this offense. The offensive line was so unhealthy last year that if that can be a bit healthier and if they can surround him with, possibly an upgrade at running back, then he could definitely be at least to the level that we saw him from last year. And being able to get that kind of not just pure safety option, but safety with a ceiling is something that I think is worth paying up for in Dynasty.
Yeah, I love that pick, Tom. I think CJ Stroud pretty much the only way you could go here in Superflex after the season he had. But kind of weirdly, a few days ago, randomly popped in my head, wasn't even thinking about fantasy football, was kind of just washing the dishes, and it just popped in my head. I just thought, is CJ Stroud, is this the highest his value is ever going to be? Should we actually be looking to maybe cash in on CJ Stroud now? Is that a crazy thought, Tom?
No, I don't think it is. And I think it's an entirely fair thing to say. But if you cashed out on CJ Stroud right now, what would you be looking for? You'd be looking for a really high price. And, and again, that's the kind of asset I think that you're buying from CJ Stroud if you were to go back and take him at 101, knowing that you've got a very tradable asset. I mean, if you look at Anthony Richardson or Bijan Robinson, who we'll get to as we go through this, their values haven't increased. But taking CJ Stroud, his values increased a lot. And I think right now I just feel more comfortable having him on my roster than anyone else.
Yeah, absolutely fair point. How about if I threw this at you, Tom? CJ Stroud or Lamar Jackson?
It's Lamar Jackson, there's no question.
Correct. Yeah, no, I'm with you there. But I think it's a move that you can make if you are the CJ Stroud owner, because I've seen so many already startups this year where CJ Stroud has gone off the board before Lamar Jackson. He's been ranked above Lamar Jackson in various people's rankings. I see you shaking your head, Rich. Have you got an opinion on this? Strong opinion?
It's madness, absolute madness. I think, okay, CJ Stroud has had a phenomenal rookie year, but Lamar's, a tried and tested, proven fantasy performer. And I think that his ceiling is higher. I think his floor is higher. And I think that in the second year in this Todd Monken offense, Lamar Jackson's going to take an even bigger step forward. And I just can't see a world where I take CJ Stroud over Lamar Jackson straight up.
Well, we're segueing a bit here, and I make no apologies when it comes to Lamar Jackson. But this is what happened in previous years with players like Joe Burrow or Trevor Lawrence being taken ahead of Lamar Jackson in startups, because people talk themselves into pocket passes being safer assets going forward. But what we see is for the pocket passes, if you are not adding much on the ground, then you rely on these 99 percentile outcomes where you're getting 300 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns every game to be incredibly relevant. We even saw it with Patrick Mahomes to an extent this year. And there's no situation where I would talk myself into CJ Stroud over the likes of Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, or even Jalen Hurts. Those three are completely clear for me.
And can I just piggyback on Tom's point and say Baker Mayfield was the QB3 in Dynasty after his rookie year? And how do people feel after that right now? Because it was only one way his value was going. And now, Baker Mayfield had a phenomenal rookie year. It wasn't as good as CJ Stroud. I don't think CJ Stroud is going to have the career that Baker Mayfield has had since then. But I just think, we get very excited about a very small sample size. We overinflate some of these guys' value, and sometimes there's only one way it can go.
Certainly agree, especially when you see him being ranked as high as quarterback 3 in Dynasty and sometimes 4. It is insane. I don't think there's a way he can get above perhaps Mahomes and Josh Allen. So for me, the only way is down. I think the team and the Texans is trending upwards. That doesn't always necessarily correlate to fantasy points for the quarterback position. I think his ceiling he's probably reached it now in terms of his value. So there's moves to make, but I'm in total agreement that he is the 101 in this draft. So we'll move on to the 102. So over to you, Rich. Who have you got?
So I'm going to go Anthony Richardson. It feels slightly mad, doesn't it? This is basically what I know he played in 4 games, but it was really only 2.5 games. And yet we're still happy to take him at the 102 after that. I think what he showed in that 2.5 games was tantalizing enough that we've kind of got to buy in. In those games, he put up 10 rushing attempts in 2 of the first 3. He had a rushing touchdown in all 3 of those. And I think the most impressive thing is he was competent from the pocket. The biggest knock on him was his accuracy. I never worried about him as a pocket passer. His ability to avoid sacks, his ability to make the right read was always there. It was just his footwork and his mechanics fell apart, so his accuracy dropped. I think that the fact that he was, competent from a completion percentage standpoint, around 60% for the year, that's encouraging. I think now he's had some time away, hopefully will have worked on some of those fundamentals and mechanics. I think there could be a world where Anthony Richardson is in that CJ Stroud tier, and if not beyond that, very early on, once we get into the season, the volume of rushing production that he puts up is pretty much unlike any other quarterback outside of Lamar and Jalen Hurts, really. I think the way that the Colts are going to use him and the inventiveness of Steichen's offense, which to me is one of probably a top 3 schemed offense in the league right now. I'm really excited about what Anthony Richardson could be. yes, there is absolutely a flaw where if he doesn't take that step as a passer, if he doesn't continue to improve, he could, no longer be a starting quarterback in sort of a year or two. But I think at this point, the ceiling is number one player in fantasy. And so you've got to take him here.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth there, Richard. His ceiling is the number one player in fantasy football, someone who might be going at the 1-1 overall, in a couple of years' time. He has just got absolutely everything you need for in terms of, winning fantasy points. The only worry for me is I just really hope he's been taking a page out of, I know, for whatever reason, Tom, you're on and we're talking about Lamar Jackson a lot, but I take a page out of his book and learn how to fall, learn how to take these hits. Don't go trucking people over. I know you're a big guy, I know you're a strong guy, but you're no use to someone if you don't have a shoulder. So yeah, just play a bit more sensibly. Take the less hits, even though, you can take them, right? You proved your point, Anthony. Let's take it easy, please. Now let's take a foot off the gas a little bit.
I think on the Lamar point, the best thing that Lamar does is he either gets out of bounds, gets down, or if he's going to take a hit, he leaves his feet. If you watch it, it's phenomenal the amount of times where he takes a hit and he leaves his feet, which means he's not going to get any of the ankle or the knee injuries where he gets caught up under somebody, but it also softens the blow because he's not fighting against the hit. He's just going with it. And if Anthony Richardson can start doing that and not just, everybody talks about, they need to slide, they need to get out of bounds, but it's taking a hit in a way that absorbs the contact rather than fights against the contact. He will significantly reduce the amount of injuries he's had. And I think that's where Lamar Jackson separates himself to a lot of the other Russian quarterbacks.
Just needs to learn to do Jui-Jitsu like Tua.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's what we need. Anthony Richardson, Eminari rolling people, instead of going down, right? That would be absolutely brilliant. But yeah, I think Richardson, he's the guy I would take here at 1-2. You know what? I would even like to even make some deals. We talk about CJ Stroud. I wouldn't be opposed to getting Anthony Richardson plus for CJ Stroud. I think that would be a nice pivot to make. I think they're a lot closer than people think. And by the end, this time next year, I wouldn't be shocked to see them have flipped around, actually, if Richardson can stay healthy the whole year.
Yeah, he's the guy that I'm desperately trying to get even more shares of this offseason. I think for what you pay now, you're going to be paying more this time next offseason. And Rich touched on it, is the passing that really impressed me, because that was my question mark coming in. Just the fact that he was so raw, but he really impressed me with some of his throws and just his poise. Needs to clear up them hits, but other than that, the ceiling is absolutely astronomical. I'm excited to see the continuation with Shane Steichen, Michael Pittman hopefully re-signing. I'm pretty sure that's going to happen. Just seeing where this offense can go in the future if he can stay healthy. So really, really excited for him there. Question about Richardson and the incoming rookies. Would you have him over Caleb Williams or Drake May, whoever's your number one? Would you be taking Richardson above those guys?
Sorry, was that me? That was full.
Well, it's not for me. Come on, let's be honest. You know more about the rookies than I do.
Yeah, I'd take Anthony Richardson over any quarterback in this class. I think that just the ceiling is higher than anybody outside maybe Jaden Daniels, and I think Jaden Daniels' floor is astronomically higher than anything Anthony Richardson has. So yeah, I think the fact that almost that little bit of proof of concept, I'd have Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Anthony Richardson in exactly the same tier. I've almost got them exactly valued the same in my survival kit. But I just think that proof of concept that we've seen Anthony Richardson can be an NFL caliber quarterback means that I would lean him ever so slightly over May or Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And we'll move on to the 103. And this is another guy that the ceiling is astronomically high. Obviously didn't see it this year, but hopefully going forward, we will. So Tom, over to you.
Yeah, I'm taking Bijan Robinson here, and I think, he's one of those players that it's a bit like the Trevor Lawrence scenario where everybody was so convinced on their opinion when Trevor Lawrence came out, and then all it took was some poor coaching and some iffiness in the first year, and people seemed to back off how strongly they felt about him. with Bijan, yeah, he was RB12 in total points, RB19 in points per game. But I really do think that this year is going to be a step forward. Zach Robinson is new offensive coordinator, comes from the Shanahan tree, worked with Raheem Morris with the Rams for a few years. And Raheem Morris named Bijan of one of two players who were appealing to him when he took the job. He said, Bijan Robinson, Drake London. He did not say Kyle Pitts or Tyler Algier or John O. Smith for that matter. And it's just one of those situations where I fully believe that Bijan is going to be able to take a step forward. He had 32 more total rush attempts than Jahmyr Gibbs last season, yet Gibbs still managed to have 5 more rush attempts in the red zone than Bijan. He just wasn't used down there correctly for whatever reason. But he had 9 games over 80 scrimmage yards. He was 4th in targets among all running backs for 78th, 7th in missed tackles forced. We saw all the glimpses of a true elite running back. He just didn't really get the red zone role or the kind of usage that we needed. And he definitely didn't get the competent quarterback play or the competent play calling. So I'm very excited for Bijan this year. I think if you can go out and buy Bijan cheap, then it's absolutely worth doing. I think that we could be looking at the RB1 overall in 2024.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. To be honest, we have labelled him a bit of a bust from last year. Feels harsh just because of, I guess, the ADP of where he was going. In round 1 of a lot of redrafts, and but you have to say that he's just unlucky with the usage, the scheme, the quarterback play, the total red zone opportunities there were for the Falcons. You just have to believe they're all going to increase this year. More competent coaching. You have to just believe that his opportunities are going to go up, and he's going to feast on them. And he looked good in his opportunities that he had last year. So yeah, I'm excited. I've only got one running back ahead of him in Dynasty, which is Breece Hall, but they could easily flip this time next offseason with a big year for Bijan Robinson. Rich, would he be your pick here at 103, Bijan?
Yeah, I think so. There or thereabouts, certainly. I mean, the upside is phenomenal. Let's be honest. It's hard not to go anywhere else other than here. I'd have been potentially tempted by my guy that I'm going to pick next. But yeah, I think Bijan's a great pick here.
Well, let's get into your guy, Rich. 104. Who are you picking now?
So I'm going Puka Nacua. Feels slightly wild that I can get the guy that's had the single greatest rookie wide receiver season ever at the 104, but hey, let's do it. Yeah, I mean, anyone that said they would have predicted what happened last year from Puka Nacua is lying, because there were some people that liked him, but no one liked him as much as he potentially put up. Absolutely phenomenal stats. You can sit here and list them all, but 4 games below 10 PPR points for me, just so consistent and just never felt like he burnt you. Tied to Matthew Stafford, who criminally underrated, I think an elite quarterback, and I think he's going to be going nowhere for the next 2-3 years. I think this offense could continue to be phenomenal, and I'm really excited about what Puka Nacua could be. I think if he'd have got day 2 draft capital, we'd be talking about the Dynasty wide receiver 1 right now. I think the only reason, he's my wide receiver 7, and I think the only reason he's in that sort of 2nd, 3rd tier is because he was a day 3 pick, basically.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, to be honest. It was astonishing what he produced from where he got drafted. Clearly fell through the net of a lot of NFL teams and of a lot of us picking him in our rookie drafts last offseason. But just an incredible year. Obviously learned a lot from playing with Cooper Kupp. I think is absolutely brilliant to have Cooper Kupp playing alongside him, taking a lot of the heat away. But what he's managed to achieve on his own in outproducing Cooper Kupp has been absolutely outstanding. And I think you have to have him in that 2nd tier in Dynasty in terms of wide receivers. I've got him around about the same spot as you, Rich, just below my top 3. And I think he's there to stay. There was obviously question marks on Matthew Stafford coming into this year, but I think with what he's managed to achieve and that offense and that quick turnaround from what we thought they could be a bad team this year into a good team, I think he's there to stay for at least a couple of years more. So love Puka Nacua. Great pick, and he's yeah, easily my pick at 104. Mags, would you have gone for Puka at this point?
Yeah, definitely. And I think with Puka, it's a really weird situation that we're in at the minute where a lot of people are still like, yeah, but what if this? Yeah, but what if that? Like, those are the questions for before the season started. Like, so many of these questions have already been answered by Puka, and I don't know why people are still posing more and more like hypotheticals towards him. We've seen what he did. He outproduced Justin Jefferson's rookie season, which is crazy. This guy's a star, and I'll take as many as I can if people are still going to question him. He's amazing.
It's like people just want to downplay it, but he had 7+ targets in every single game apart from week 18 when he left the field early after breaking the records.
Yeah.
He managed that all the time, whilst Matthew Stafford had a wide receiver who had also broken records and knew that he could be his safety valve, but he still targeted Puka Nacua constantly because he knew what he had there. Puka Nacua, for me, if I hadn't taken Bijan Robinson at 103, I absolutely would have taken Puka there. I think the reason why I possibly lean slightly towards Bijan Robinson at 103 is knowing that not every running back class is like that one. And this year, definitely that kind of affects that. But if I was to do it, I mean, yeah, you can't put any flaws in Puka Nacua. And everyone who's desperate to retire Matt Stafford, like, he's made no indications of that. It's like, for me, I still treat Matthew Stafford as a very good startable quarterback going forward.
I think the other thing with Puka Nacua that people don't seem to talk about is what he did against zone coverage last year was absolutely wild. We think of zone beaters as those savvy veterans that can understand the soft spots and can find those. Puka Nacua was second in the league last year in yards per route run versus zone coverage. He averaged 3.04 yards per route run. The only guy ahead of him was Tyreek Hill, and Tyreek Hill and yards per route run basically just completely breaks the stat. The ability as a rookie in the first year of an offense to just essentially break NFL defenses when they were playing zone coverage is absolutely wild. And the zone coverage stats are stats that transfer year after year. It's the man coverage stats that tend to drop and be a little bit more hit and miss. The fact that he can beat zone as a rookie consistently means I'm very, very confident in him kind of transitioning into next year and beyond.
Yep, I think absolutely 4 studs that we picked there, and we'll continue the theme with amazing stats, especially later on in the season and what he's been able to do in the playoffs. Over to you, Tom, with the 105.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to go back to running back and I'm going to pick Jahmyr Gibbs here. I think what he did, particularly from week 7 onwards, was just flat out incredible. He had 6 top 3 weekly finishes from that point. And yes, there were a couple of games that David Montgomery missed, but he was doing that for the majority of the time whilst David Montgomery was still getting touches. The Lions saw what they had and they absolutely unleashed him. He only had 4 goal line attempts all year, but finished joint 7th in total touchdowns among running backs with 10. Last year, Mags, you were on our show for a rookie mock draft, and it got feisty when people were talking about comparisons with Alvin Kamara. But now when you look back at that, the only thing that's different is perhaps Jahmyr Gibbs isn't quite as good a receiving back. Like, it feels like there's still some meat on the bone there. But his 5 targets per game ranked 5th among running backs. He was ahead of Bijan Robinson, ahead of Saquon Barkley. I don't think David Montgomery's going anywhere next season, but I would fully expect Jahmyr Gibbs to be, out touching him as we saw from week 7 onwards this year that he did this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up sort of adding at least another 3 or 4 touchdowns to this team.
Yeah, I think the touchdown thing is big for Gibbs, right? I think that's something that we see a lot, like touchdown regression and progression is constantly flowing. So I think he seems like he's due a couple more touchdowns. What I love about Jahmyr Gibbs is if you watch the Lions in the playoff, they took the rev limiter off Jahmyr Gibbs and really let him go for it. That was really nice to see. So I'm hoping that's it now. The training wheels are kind of off for Jahmyr Gibbs and he'll roll in, and he's very much like the running back 1, and Montgomery's very much the B option rather than at the minute it's kind of been that 50-50. But yeah, I think you're right, Tom. I think we'll see Gibbs as the main guy getting hopefully the most important touches. I do imagine Montgomery will end up hoovering up some of those goal line touchdowns, which is slightly unfortunate, but hopefully Gibbs can make up for that with more catches.
The big thing for Gibbs was that he had to earn the trust to be on the field for the play action passes through the running, because the Lions run so much play action because Jared Goff's so good at it. And Jahmyr Gibbs being able to, even if he could even hold his own in pass protection there a little bit better than he did this year, then he's going to get more snaps there because he'll be trusted equally with David Montgomery. And then that's really going to open up more, because when you're running play action and then all of a sudden you've got a guy who blocks and then gets out into the flat, we know what Jahmyr Gibbs can do in that situation.
Yeah, I think the continuation with Ben Johnson as well in this offense is going to be key into year 2. That was a big coup for all the players, the offensive players for the Lions. Shane Cave's not on the show because he's just a massive Gibbs fan who would be getting a bit excited right now. But Rich, what do you see Gibbs' ceiling being? Do you think he can be Dynasty RB1?
I don't think he's going to be Dynasty RB1 as long as David Montgomery's in that backfield. I think just the fact that there are going to be other backs that aren't having to split carries means that he's never going to be the Dynasty RB1. That's not to say he can't finish as the RB1 in a season. I just don't think he'll ever be valued as the RB1, because there will always be that argument of, oh, well, he's got to be split carries, but for argument's sake, Breece Hall doesn't. So let's go Breece Hall over Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I definitely agree with that as well. We'll move on to the 106 pick, and we'll go back to the quarterback well. So over to you, Rich.
Yeah, it feels like this is becoming my brand this off-season, and I'm not sure I particularly like it. But I'm going to go Bryce Young here. I just refuse to accept that through a 9-month period, we can go from a guy that was the 101 in a lot of Superflex drafts, was an elite prospect, did phenomenal things at Alabama, had a horrendous offensive line. Excuse me. Horrendous offensive line, horrendous wide receivers, horrendous coaching staff, and nobody's given him a pass for that. Yet we can do that with Trevor Lawrence when he had all of those things, and we can do that with other quarterbacks. But Bryce Young, because he's short, that's it. His NFL career is over. So yeah, I really like him here and think he'd be a great value.
So
yeah, I think
Oh, sorry, Ali, go on.
No, go ahead, Mags. Love to hear your take on Bryce Young.
My issue with Bryce Young at the 1-6 is this is where I had him this time last year. So for me, he has to drop significantly further. And my point with him last year was I could see a situation where he wins as an NFL quarterback, but I just can't really see where he's getting you what you need in terms of your fantasy team. I think he's got a ceiling of quarterback 2. I don't see how he ever finishes as a quarterback 1, just with the abilities that he has. Last year was, you're right, Rich, a horrendous offensive line, horrendous everywhere. He had statistically around, we're looking at the same sort of first season Zach Wilson had at the Jets. That's how bad it was, which we don't really need to go over again. We know how rubbish it was. The thing that really worries me is he can't rush. He rushed about the same amount as Tua, who literally has his life on the line. So that's how much that he rushes. So I just don't see where he wins and where he picks up these points for you. And I don't know how much better it's really going to get for him. We kind of thought someone like a Jonathan Mingo might unlock things. He didn't really work. Some of these older vets didn't work. I mean, Thielen looked okay for a little while. I just don't see it. And I'm as far as to say that I've got Will Levis ahead of him now.
I strongly disagree, Mags. I think that like, I get what you're saying. I think, Daniel Jeremiah talks about his trucks and trailers. And I think that Bryce Young is never going to be a truck. He is never going to be the type of player that can carry an entire offense. He is going to need a well-schemed offense with competent receiving weapons and a good offensive line. But I don't think we can sit here when Jared Goff has just come off a year where he finished as the overall QB7. And I think that Bryce Young is a better prospect than Jared Goff was. Jared Goff had just as bad a rookie year as Bryce Young did when he didn't have a good offensive coordinator, good offensive line, good receivers. And everybody's completely forgotten that happened to Jared Goff. And yes, Bryce Young is short. And it almost feels like because he's short, everyone's gone, that's it, he's a bust. He can't ever succeed. I think, Bryce Young is probably never going to be an elite top 3, top 5 quarterback. But for a mid first round pick, if you're telling me that I can get back end QB1, high end QB2 production for 3 years, that's absolutely worth this pick. And I think that there is a world where Bryce Young could give you 9-10 years of back end QB1, high end QB2 production. So that's easily overpaying this pick. And I just think that I get what you're saying, and I agree that, you know, fantasy production at the quarterback position is largely dictated by the rushing production. But I think we're almost going too far as a fantasy community, where we're almost kind of fantasizing over this rushing production. Actually, most quarterbacks, in fact, I think all quarterbacks still produce more fantasy points through the air. And I think that the passing gives you the floor, the rushing production gives you the ceiling. And I think because Bryce Young still has that pocket passer, elite accuracy, elite processor, that gives him a solid floor so that he can potentially be Jared Goff 2.0.
I'm not quite as strong about it as you, but I love what you say about flipping it and it's the passing that gives you the floor. But it's one of these situations. You go back, Lamar Jackson in his rookie season was not in a good situation passing wise. And then nobody expected him to take the leap he did. I'm not saying he could be Lamar Jackson. Jalen Hurts in his first season wasn't particularly great. And they went and got AJ Brown, and all of a sudden things took a step forward. You look at Trevor Lawrence, he wasn't in a good situation because of coaching. They took a step forward. And I hesitate to write a player off after a year unless they've been awful in other ways. And I know what you're saying, Mags, about we thought Jonathan Mingo could do all right. But Jonathan Mingo looked like absolute ass. You know, we've all seen the highlights of him failing to get his feet in bounds. So, yeah, like Jonathan Mingo was absolutely not what anybody expected him to be in a best case scenario or even a medium case scenario. He was terrible. DJ Chark looked pretty toast. Adam Thielen had a good first 6 games before completely tailing off after the bye week. And I don't think, we're ever going to see Bryce Young become a top 10 quarterback anytime soon. But if the Panthers went out and threw a load of money at T. Higgins, and then if they got a good wide receiver, not a Jonathan Mingo in the draft, then it just feels like we could see a completely different scenario. Because coming into last year, when you looked at that team and you were looking at best ball stacks and similar, there was no way you wanted anything to do with that team. We all knew it was going to be horrible on paper. We thought the offensive line would be better than it was. We thought the coaching would be better than it was. But we all knew the receivers were awful. And I think I'm willing to give him a second chance. I think there's possibly 1 or 2 players I would have taken ahead of him here. But I don't hate paying a late first for him, as Rich has banged the table for a few times lately.
I think if you added, let's say, give him Mike Evans, Xavier Worthy.
If Ali's got to kick off, you said Mike Evans.
That was the only reason.
It's hypothetical, Mags. I'll allow it.
If you gave him Xavier Worthy, Mike Evans, a big upgrade in offensive play calling, which I think he's going to get, and I think that offensive line is going to rebound this year, it's suddenly a completely different situation, and everyone's going to feel very differently about Bryce Young. Realistically, yes, I may have taken him a bit earlier. I could probably waited 2-3 picks, as Tom mentioned. But that's, I'm confident in him, and I think that at this value, if he is a high-end QB2, that's still a great return on the investment.
Yeah, my opinion on this is he's got a damn good head coach now. Now, that might be a slightly biased opinion on Dave Canales, but what he's managed to show in the last 2 years with Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield has been pretty sensational. Look at Geno Smith this year, not been half the player he was the previous year. I think I agree with Tom as well that I'd probably have a couple of players over him, but I think in 12 months' time, if you look back and you did take Bryce Young here, it's the smart pick. I think you're definitely... It's an absolute fine pick at 106. I don't blame you at all. I think the two or three players coming up here are probably worth a lot more in Dynasty right now. But yeah, I think that is the smart pick. So we will talk about those players right now. So the 107, and over to you, Tom.
I was a little bit torn here, but I went with my head over my heart, and I went with Tank Dell. We put out a Dynasty Buys video today, and Rich kind of waxed lyrical about Tank Dell, so you can head over to our YouTube channel to find that, and I'm just going to steal most of the stats that Rich talked about. He was the rookie wide receiver 2 in points per game, 20% target share, 30% air yards market share. Between weeks 9 and 12, he was the wide receiver 3, averaging 23.7 points per game. I mean, he just looked incredible. I think there's going to be some people who worry themselves about a broken fibula and whether that slows him down to start the year. You know, we saw with Tony Pollard that can happen. There's been other cases of broken fibulas slowing players down in their first season back. But I'm not interested in what Tank Dell does in the first 4 games of the season. I'm interested in what Tank Dell is giving me when we get to the playoffs. Far too many people in Dynasty worry themselves about, oh, I need somebody who is going to give me this production throughout the year. Rookies, young players at the start of their careers, time and time again, by the time we get to the playoffs, that's when they come into their own. And I'm fine taking that gamble that that's what we're going to get from Dell this year. Again, I think because of Nico Collins' emergence, you're going to get a discount on Dell. But I think both these players can be very, very relevant. You know, we've seen plenty of teams across the league where 2 or 3 passing options are completely relevant at times. And yeah, I just love everything about Tank Dell.
Well, Ali, I'll let you take Tank Dell. I've talked too much about Bryce Young.
Well, I'm just going to echo a lot of what Tom has said there. Basically, Tank Dell is absolutely love the guy. Just does amazing with what he's got. I really did not expect to see. I really like Tank Dell as a prospect. Did not expect to see him produce just constantly the big performances that he done. Wasn't just a one-off. It was constantly. Obviously, really good link up with CJ Stroud. That is really exciting going forward. And yeah, it's Dynasty. I'm not worried about what he does the first half of the season. His value is insulated. The question for me, and I wanted to ask you two, is who do you prefer out of Tank Dell and Nico Collins for Dynasty?
I think for me, it's Tank Dell. I think that it's funny because I was having this conversation with somebody in my DMs today after I put out the buys video about Tank Dell. We're talking about Tank Dell and Nico Collins, and they were kind of back and forth. I think you could argue that it's 1A, 1B when they were both on the field and both healthy this year. Okay. Nico Collins was in his 3rd NFL season. Mm-hmm. He did very little in his first 2. Tank Dell was a rookie, a 3rd round pick rookie, and he played level with a guy that's been in the league for 3 years, and yet people are still preferring Nico Collins. It's purely, I think, a lazy size thing of Nico Collins is bigger. He's a ex-alpha, absolutely hate the term, wide receiver, and Tank Dell is smaller, undersized, so people just pick the bigger guy. I think if you put them next to each other, Tank Dell's a better route runner. Tank Dell gets open, and I think with a guy that is as accurate as CJ Stroud is, give me the guy that gets open.
Yeah, I think I just lean towards Tank Dell. It's a lot of what Rich talked about there. Yes, Nico Collins gets a bit of a pass for having to play with Davis Mills, but I'll take the younger player, the player who everything we've seen from him has been excellent. I do think Nico Collins, does some incredible things for a player of his size, like the way he manipulates his body and stuff is excellent. But yeah, I just lean towards Nico Collins because of kind of Dynasty cliches of the younger player earlier on in his career here.
I will just say, inspired wildcard pick last year, Tom, in Nico Collins. It was one of the best we had.
I mean, I've been sitting here mentioning Nico Collins a few times, just waiting for you to bring that up, Ali.
I was hoping we wouldn't mention wildcard picks, so let's just move on.
It was one of them at the time where obviously he had 2 years of doing not much, and when you picked him, I was sort of, I can sort of see it, but half of me didn't believe that we were going to see a breakout from Nico, and there it was. Well,
I mean, part of that was because I was quite high on the Texans in general last year and we've already talked about it with the Rams coaching tree and sort of, Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson going to Falcons. It just felt inevitable for me that Bobby Slowick was going to bring fresh ideas to this offense, and we've seen how QB-friendly that scheme can be elsewhere. So it just seemed inevitable that Nico Collins was going to take a step forward. Part of that was because I wasn't as familiar with Tank Dell as I was with Nico Collins, and it just felt like Nico Collins, being the established player, might have a chance to run ahead of him. But what we saw was two excellent wide receivers in the end.
Yeah, agreed. And then one quick one for you, Mags. Would you have Tank Dell over? We've got a list of a few wide receivers we're going to talk about in a minute. Would you have him over those guys in Dynasty?
Yes, just. So there is a sort of debate, I think, as we go down the list, but for the guys we're about to speak about, I would take Tank Dell over all of these guys. I wouldn't have the guys that are coming up next in the exact order that they're in here, but I would have Tank Dell at the top of that list. I just think he's, like Rich mentioned, he just gets open so well. Like, it looks like he's playing like with different rules or something. Sometimes he's so open, which you don't really see that often in the NFL. The guy's just a magician. And yeah, people worried about a broken fibula. It's only a little fibula, guys. Remember, he'll be fine.
Well said, and we'll go on to another little guy here, but certainly a tremendous player in Dynasty. So, Rich, over to you with the 108.
Yeah, this was purely just in retaliation. Tom took my guy in Tank Dell, so I had to take his guy in Zay Flowers. Really impressive rookie season. I think he showed more ability to run nuanced routes and go deep, particularly, than I thought he would. I thought he would be a short to intermediate guy that was used on gadget plays and not much else. But his ability to stretch the field, I was surprised by. I mentioned it earlier. I think this Ravens offense in the second year under Todd Monken is going to take a step forward. I think the offense is going to be built around Zay Flowers, quite frankly. I think that we're going to see the likes of, Mark Andrews be that secondary, if not tertiary option. I do expect the Ravens to add a wide receiver into this core. I don't know if they'll be bringing back Odell Beckham, given how much they paid him this year. I don't know if they'll be willing to stump up the cash again. But I think there will be someone added. But I think it's if anything, it's going to help, take coverage away from Zay Flowers. I don't think it's going to detract from his target share and his production, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think this is a great pick. Zay Flowers, you're right, Rich. He seems to be locked in as that number one option. He's really come in and cemented himself there. And I mean, Mark Andrews going out certainly helped, his fantasy causes, because Lamar Jackson had to look around, and you would have assumed it would have been someone like Odell Beckham Jr. would have emerged as the guy, just being the veteran there. But Zay Flowers really, really stepped up. And I just love the extra wrinkles that he added that we maybe didn't expect him to do quite so early. Like, talked about that deep threat that he had, which was, I didn't quite see it, but even as far as the last playoff game, he did light the Chiefs on fire with one of those routes that he did on L'Jarius Sneed, arguably the best cornerback in the NFL. He just torched him. So if he could do it. What? L'Jarius Sneed. All right. Yeah, keep
He's very good. Very
Keep
good.
laughing at the Chiefs, everybody. Let's see how that works out.
Sneed's very good. I don't think Sneed's the best corner on his team, let alone the best corner in the NFL.
I mean, Trent McDuffie is very good. I will give you that. But nevertheless, Zay Flowers turned him inside out and absolutely torched him, which is so impressive for a rookie. So yeah, I absolutely love what he's seen, and I expect him and the whole Ravens offense to take a step forward next year for sure. Shout out L'Jarius Sneed.
Yeah. Just from my point of view, pretty much echoing the same is what he showed in college was he was electric with the ball in his hands, but then his route running in the NFL has been downright just naughty. It's been really impressive from me, and that's all I've got really to add. Absolutely love the guy in Dynasty. Better give the final word to you, Tom, on Zay Flowers.
What was really encouraging, I mean, as a Ravens fan, we've seen so many wide receivers come in as rookies and not live up to expectations. You go back, like Rashad Perryman was one of the worst picks the Ravens have ever made, and he completely flatlined as a rookie throughout his contract. And it never felt like that was really on the cards here. But what was fantastic to see was that Lamar trusted him to get open, and he would throw him open. Whereas over the previous few years, when he's been thrown to the likes, you can go back and look at like Michael Crabtree, Des Bryant, all these kind of dusty wide receivers who they brought in at points. And there was never that level of trust with them. He did have that with Marquise Brown before he left. And this felt like the first time since when Lamar would really trust an option and know that he could get open on a whim. And yeah, I mean, he's the most productive rookie wide receiver the Ravens have ever had. And I feel very strong about him going forward. And if Richard let him slide one more pick, I absolutely would have taken him here at the 109. But as it is, I'm going to take Sam Laporta. And I am a little bit wary about what regression is going to look like for Laporta. He had 9 touchdowns this year, 2 2-point conversions. No other tight end had more than, I think it was 6 or 7 touchdowns. Nobody else had more than 1 2-point conversion. So it's very clear that Sam Laporta, he did finish as the tight end 1. But a big part of that came from touchdowns, which we know aren't a sticky year-to-year thing. We know that tight ends could easily see regression there. We saw it for Travis Kelce this year. We saw it for, we've seen it for Mark Andrews at times. We've seen it for George Kittle. But I think what's really encouraging with Sam Laporta is the way the Lions use him. They put him in motion. They use him on design plays. They use him when, Jared Goff needs to make a play. He'll look to Laporta. So even if he experiences some touchdown regression, I feel very strongly that Sam Laporta can be a top 5, top 6 option for the next 5-6 years with no problems as long as he's healthy.
Yeah, absolutely love the pick. And I think if this was tight end premium for me, I could have easily selected him 1 or 2 places higher. I think his value now is absolutely insane. I don't see him being a Travis Kelce where he's just going to dominate for the next 5-10 years. But I do think he's definitely in the top tier. He is my tight end 1, but he's very much similar to someone like a Trey McBride in terms of value in my eyes. But what impressed me the most was just his usage in the playoffs has been pretty spectacular. I know against the Bucks, we just could not get near him. He was over the middle every single time, catching every single pass. And they clearly trusted him as a rookie. And then against the 49ers, he puts up another big game as well. So just that really impresses me. He's playing beyond his age. But yeah, I think where I'm seeing him go in startups this year is, to me, a bit high, like the mid-second round I've been seeing him go, which is absolutely insane. I wouldn't be touching that. But clearly a really important player in Dynasty and someone to look forward to. But not personally myself, because I have 0 shares because I didn't draft him anywhere last year, so I'm kicking myself. But Rich, what's your feelings on Sam Laporta? Is he your tight end 1, and how do you feel about him going forward?
He's not my tight end 1. He's my tight end 2. I've got Trey McBride ahead just because I think Trey McBride basically outproduced Laporta in every advanced statistic, every receiving statistic except touchdowns. And we all know that touchdowns aren't the most sticky. So I do think that's why I've got McBride ahead, but I've got them exactly the same value. And I think that, I agree with what you're saying. I don't like his cost in a startup. I don't like him as the tight end 1 because I think there's no real tight end 1. It's almost like there's 4 tight end 2s. But he's kind of, the one that gets there. And I think that there's a lot to like about him as a player. I think what he did this year was absolutely phenomenal. I expect him to keep producing. But yeah, the cost in startups is scary right now.
Certainly is.
So at the 110, I'm going to start off with a question for you all. So I'm going to go Jordan Addison. Okay. So Kirk Cousins went down with his Achilles injury week 8. At that point, week 8, where was Jordan Addison ranked in fantasy points at the wide receiver position?
It's probably top 24, I would guess.
Top 24 from Tom, Mags?
I think he might have even snuck into wide receiver 1 conversation. He might have even been like 12, 13.
Ali?
I'd say about 18, 19.
Okay. He was the wide receiver 11 at that point in the season. He was 4 points behind CD Lamb, who went on to finish as the overall wide receiver 1. And in that span, he had a game where he put up 0 fantasy points. So You know, I think everybody is kind of sleeping on and forgotten about how good Jordan Addison was to start the season. And yes, 4 of those games came with Justin Jefferson injured. But I think that what we've seen is that traditionally when a quarterback goes down and backups come in, they can almost hold the fantasy production of one asset. They struggle to hold the secondary and tertiary options in an offense. And those are the guys that struggle. And I think that's where Jordan Addison struggled. And, you know, he didn't disappear. He still had some decent production down the stretch. He still had a 20-point game in the fantasy playoffs. But I think he's a elite number 2 option. And I wouldn't be shocked if he comes out and has a, you know, Devonta Smith 2022, T. Higgins 2022 type season where he could put up, you know, wide receiver 1 production despite being the secondary target on his offense.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. Yeah, sorry, Alec.
No, I'd just like to point out that I think you're spot on, Rich, and he's the forgotten man almost when people talk about this rookie class. Obviously, the next guy we're going to talk about is the guy that, well, I say Jackson Smith and Jigba is the guy everyone's thinking, well, Tyler Lockett out the door. He's going to step up and be the next guy. That's the guy that you want. They talk about what Zay Flowers produced, what Tank Dell produced. There's nobody talking about Jordan Addison right now. So I'd love to see where a lot of people have him valued because I'd be seriously interested in him this offseason. Obviously, with the talk about Kirk Cousins, is he going to come back? I feel like that obviously will happen. And yeah, the continuation of what he managed to produce early on in his rookie season is phenomenal. So yeah, absolutely love Jordan Addison. And we'll move on to that guy that I mentioned there. So 111. Over to you, Tom.
Yeah, so I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba, for me, Rich, I believe you had JSN as your wide receiver 2 post-draft last year. And it was Jordan Addison ahead of him. And I would have taken Jordan Addison ahead of JSN. But the way some people have reacted to Jackson Smith and Jigba's rookie season, it's a bit like Bijan Robinson. It's a bit like, I mentioned this on another show this week already, but I go back to the Dark Knight when Heath Ledger's the Joker's like confronting all the gangsters and he's like, you know, what happened to you? Did your balls drop off? You're here cowering away. And that's what it is. It's like people, they didn't see Jackson Smith and Jigba come out and have an Amon-Ra St. Brown like end to his rookie season. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, can he earn the targets on an elite level? The Seahawks offense massively regressed last year. Nobody was expecting that. That wasn't, you know, yes, we thought Geno might come back down to earth a little bit, but the play on the offensive line was miserable. As a whole, the team just didn't put anywhere near as many points as they did the previous year. And the thesis on JSM was always going to be that the Seahawks had to still run hot. As you mentioned, Ali, yeah, Tyler Lockett can be cut easily, so I think that's a big part of it. I think that you look at DK Metcalf, and we know what he is by now. He's a good wide receiver, but he's not an excellent one. He's failed to separate from Tyler Lockett year in and year out, despite costing far more in Dynasty, despite costing far more in redraft. The Seahawks, they don't have their offensive coordinator yet, but Mike McDonald has made some really interesting coaching hires already, very connected in the college community. And I would be very surprised if he didn't make a smart hire at offensive coordinator. And I would be very surprised if this offense wasn't built around a wide receiver like JSN who can win in layup areas of the field. And what was also really encouraging was he saw 8 red zone targets last year. That was something I didn't necessarily expect. So, yeah, I'm fully expecting him to take another step forward, but I wouldn't have taken him ahead of Jordan Addison.
Yeah, this is kind of, sorry, Rich, go on.
No, I was just going to say, can I just jump in? I agree with everything as Tom said, but I just want to push back on one little thing that it's not Tom. It seems to be almost consensus in the community at the moment, and I don't necessarily believe in it. And it's everybody keeps telling me that Tyler Lockett's definitely going to get cut. Now, Tyler Lockett's cap hit for 2024 is $27 million. I don't think he's going to play on that, but $19 million of that is guaranteed. So yes, the Seahawks can save $8 million from moving on from him, but I don't think they're going to necessarily push the reset button and move on from him. They've got the cap space to be able to move things around. I think they're potentially more likely to restructure and extend and push some money into future years and keep him around. I can't guarantee that, but I just think that paying a player like Tyler Lockett 90 million in dead cap to not play on your team feels a little bit egregious.
Well, they could cut him as a post June 1st and save 17 million against the cap and only have 9 million dead.
But that's pushing more money. That's pushing money into 2025, which why not just restructure and keep him around if you can do that?
Yeah, I get that. But we've seen plenty of teams not really too worried about that because they just say, well, the cap's going to increase by 25 million next year.
Very true.
Max, quickly, how bullish are you on Jackson Smith and Jigba now?
Yeah, my thoughts on him haven't changed too much because this is what everybody was saying was kind of going to happen this time last year. We thought it's going to be a slow season. He's behind DK Metcalf. He's behind Tyler Lockett. He's in this team that runs the ball a hell of a lot as well. So how much opportunity is he going to get anyway? Plus, he was coming off a massive injury. We didn't really play the year before. So I think now is almost his true rookie year coming in. So if he performs like he did last year and he finishes the same that he did last year, this coming season, then I'm starting to get a bit worried. But for now, I'm ready to see the real Jackson Smith and Jigba coming up this year.
Absolutely, and we'll round off the draft. Over to you, Rich, and I can see Mags getting a little bit excited with this one.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the overall quality of this class that this is a guy that is a top 15 Dynasty wide receiver at the moment in terms of keep trade cut, in terms of DLF ADP, and yet we're taking him 112 currently. It's bad, but yeah, Rashee Rice is that guy. I was a big Rashee Rice fan coming out last year, and I was lucky enough to scoop up an awful lot of shares, which I'm very pleased with right now. I thought I was high on the guy, but it feels like the hype over the last month has just taken him to extreme levels. I really like his ability with the ball in his hand. I think that he was going to continue to round out his game as a route runner because basically he only runs 3 routes at the moment. But I don't know if he's ever going to be a good enough route runner separator to be able to command 130, 150 targets, which is what he's going to need to pay off top 15 Dynasty wide receiver value. So I love the guy. I think he's phenomenal, and I'm really pleased that I've got lots of shares, but I just think at the moment the hype's almost going a little bit too far.
Yeah, so I'm really interested to see what happens with Rashee Rice going forward. We know Andy Reid's offenses are typically difficult to break down for rookies. They're not used much in year one. And to start off with, I thought perhaps it's just another Sky Moore, etc., the players that they've drafted. But he's really, really impressed me. The stretch going into the playoffs, how much they trust him as that secondary. And almost, he was the first option going sort of the second half of the season up to the playoffs. He was out-targeting and outperforming Travis Kelce. So that really impressed me. And yeah, the fact we've got him at 112 is pretty unreal. But I will go to you, Mags, for the final say because he's your guy.
I mean, he is just been so impressive down the stretch for the Chiefs. He's been someone, can catch the ball. Hugely important. Really helps going forward for the Chiefs. But I think you guys are all right as well. I think he is being hugely helped by the fact that Travis Kelce draws so much attention that he can get away with, maybe not having the best separation in the world. He's not getting the top guys put on him as well. So I would love to see the Chiefs continue to add to their receiving threats so Rashee Rice can continue to see maybe softer coverage that he might do if he had this kind of season on any other team. So love him going forward, but I'm hoping the Chiefs continue to make moves where he doesn't end up getting trickier matchups or double teams.
Yeah, love that. And we'll finish off the draft there, but there is, just to back up how awesome this class was from this past year, there's 3 guys we want to just talk about and have sort of one line each from you guys. So we call it the best of the rest here. So Devon A-Chain is the first guy I want to talk about. And what are your feelings on him, Rich, in terms of Dynasty?
I mean, the ceiling's incredible, isn't it? I remember just before he got injured in the season, having a conversation in our Discord chat with Tom and a few others saying, is he a top 6 pick in 2024 redraft? And we've just gone through a Dynasty first round and he's not gone in there. So if he can stay healthy, if this offense can continue to stay ahead in how they're scheming things, he could be absolutely phenomenal.
And you, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of showed us exactly what we expected. As Rich said, the knock on him coming on into the season was, is he going to be a bit, he's not a big enough back that he's going to be able to deal with a lot of contact. So is he going to be able to stay healthy? He wasn't able to stay healthy, but his speed and the way that Mike McDaniels used him was incredible. So we know what he is. We know Raheem Mostert probably isn't going anywhere. The Dolphins are probably going to add to look another back, and this is a really good free agency class of running backs. There's going to be a lot of really talented players out there, and I wouldn't be surprised to see one of them land in Miami.
Yeah, for me, I really do like Devon A-Chain for Dynasty. I do think he needs that bigger back to be the complement to him. I don't think he can be alone in a backfield. That really won't work, and we've seen that. So he can be just as good as a 1B, I think, and still be a top 10 fantasy running back for me. Love him in this offense. He doesn't really work in many other offenses, but this one is perfect.
He's an expensive Keaton Mitchell.
Fair point. And we'll move on to a tight end that we haven't mentioned. Mag said we needed to talk about this guy. So Dalton Kincaid. So I'll go to you first, Tom, on your thoughts on him in Dynasty.
So Dalton Kincaid's best ball ADP has risen by 3 rounds since last year. And now he's going around pick 75. But for me, Dalton Kincaid's ADP probably should have dropped by about that amount. Yes, we're chasing ceiling in best ball, and it's different to dynasty managed leagues, but Dawson Knox isn't going anywhere. We saw that the splits are going to be hugely volatile when Dawson Knox is on the field. Yes, the Bills need other wide receivers or pass catchers to stand up. But yeah, I'm a little apprehensive that he's going to turn into a top 8 tight end anytime soon.
And Rich?
Yeah, I kind of agree with everything Tom said. I like the player. I liked him coming out. He was a 99th percentile prospect for me in my model. But he disappointed as a rookie. We kind of allow tight ends that leeway. But when there's other guys in your class that are balling out, it's tough to be like, yeah, we'll give you the time. The fact that he is a top 5 dynasty tight end right now is just too rich for me. This is a guy that's never really showed it yet, and we're already putting him up ahead of, the likes of David Njoku and George Kittle, who have massively outproduced him and have still got, plenty of years left to produce. So I think also the fact that we're forgetting he wasn't a young rookie. He's 24 years old. That's older than Isaiah Likely. That's older than Trey McBride. That's the same age as Chigakonkwo. Like, we're just because he's a rookie, we're almost giving him a leeway. But this is a guy that played basically basketball in a Division II college for 2 years and spent 5 years in college. So he's not young. He needed to hit the ground running. And I don't know if he's going to get the opportunity in this offense to produce where people are expecting him to.
We better have a final say from you, Mags, on Kincaid.
He will be tight end 1 in Dynasty by the end of next season. Thank you.
Yeah, we better quickly move on to the final guy, Jaden Reed. So over to you, Rich, because I know you were rightly really high on Reed coming out.
Yeah, I loved Reed last year. He was my wide receiver 5. I was very excited and have an awful lot of shares of Reed. It just speaks to the depth of this class that we're talking about him as the 15th guy here. I really love him. He's, what are we now? He's my wide receiver 24 in Dynasty. I think he's going to be the target leader in Green Bay next year, and I think he's going to be the person that this offense is kind of built around moving forward.
Tom, do you share them sentiments on Reed?
Yeah, I mean, he showed us everything you'd hope for, really. And I think people are going to talk themselves out of Reed because this Packers young receiving core is so impressive and so diverse. But Reed showed me routinely that he is going to be the number one option when he's on the field. I think Christian Watson's going to be a very boom bust nature and will give you those higher ceiling weeks. But over the course of a year, I'd want Reed in a managed lineup every time.
Yeah, me too. I think the rushing ability, just the all round use of Reed was really, really impressive in his rookie year. So, quite rightly so, top 24 Dynasty wide receiver for me as well. So that is it. That's tonight's show where we've completed the rerun of an awesome rookie class, the 2023 rookie class. But before you go, guys, please remind the audience where they can find you and is anything you'd like to plug.
Yeah, I mean, Fantasy Sanctuary on YouTube. You can find us on Twitter at NFL_T-Strack. Well, Rich Wayne with his, but got 25 different articles coming out on Fantasy Pros during the month of February. We've got loads of mock draft rookie content coming on the YouTube channel. Pretty much whatever you're into in terms of fantasy sports, we've got it covered.
Yeah, absolutely. As Tom said, go check out the Fantasy Sanctuary. We've got the rookie guide will be dropping mid-March. I'm 42 player profiles in. I'm hoping for over 100. Very excited for that to launch and a big deal. So go and check that out. Free to all silver and gold members of the Sanctuary. Yeah,
I just want to say, just what you're doing over at the Sanctuary is incredible. Love everything that you're doing over there, and your rookie guide last year was brilliant, Rich. So I'm sure this year will be just as good, if not better. And looking forward to it.
So, cheers, guys. I mean, just about to say, you just echo those sentiments. We always really appreciate you guys and enjoy your content, and love how much the Wildcard Dynasty is stretching to include different genres.
Yeah, well, we certainly try. It's good to get some new people on board, and cannot wait to see what the Devi guys have going forward. And the Rewind crew are incredible. And Mags, is there any thoughts on tonight's show from you?
It's just always a pleasure to talk to these two amazing gentlemen. Just learn so much from each other. It's just a testament how good the UK fantasy scene is. Like just the best. I mean, the best two hosts, the best two from the Sanctuary. What else do you need?
Indeed. So, yeah, that is it. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to follow us and subscribe on X and YouTube at Fantasy Wildcard and at Wildcard Dynasty. And join us for our show, which drops every Wednesday through the off season. So, yeah, thank you once again. Have a good one, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much, guys.
When you have the wild card, you have the power to change the game.